Hey everyone. So I'm doing this video because I wanted to weigh in on this thing with the Rust movie, the shooting that took place. I didn't get a chance to see the full interview with Alec Baldwin on ABC, which as of this recording aired last night with George Stephanopoulos. But I have seen clips on other news shows. You know, they're going to run that for a good few days. And I just had to weigh in on this video because while I feel bad for everyone involved, but I feel bad for Alec Baldwin as well. Uh, I tend to think that, I'm not going to weigh in on whether he should have checked the gun or whatnot, or if he's responsible. I do have my personal feelings, but I don't have all the information to make that judgment. That's what a court of law is going to do. But some of the things that he said in that interview just didn't add up for me. So I just wanted to break down what knowledge I have, and if some of you can come to a conclusion, please let me know in the comments below. So I'm going to make an assumption that this movie was set in the Old West. I'm just making that assumption. If someone knows something different, let me know. But my premise is based on this takes place in the Old West, based on the sets that I've seen, the costuming that I've seen, which isn't a lot, granted. I haven't seen a lot, but I've gotten the impression that this takes place in the Old West. So with that premise, I make certain assumptions. So I want to start with talking about the alleged gun. They haven't released much information about it other than it was a .45 caliber revolver. Now, if this film takes place in the Old West, I'm going to assume that that was a .45 caliber single action only revolver. Now, a single action only pistol in general is very delicate. Okay, a revolver, single action revolver, requires a little bit more attention being paid to it while handling the firearm. So I just want to go into detail real quick about the single action revolver. Now, I have here a single action revolver. It is not a .45 caliber. It is a 22 long rifle, to be precise. 22 is I'll say a less effective round than the .45. It is currently loaded with these 22 caliber snap caps or dummy rounds. There is no actual primer. The primer is what actually causes the spark to take place within the shell casing. That's what causes the gunpowder to ignite, hot gases expand, push the bullet out of the bore, out of the muzzle. This is a fake round. It is a dummy round. It cannot ignite because there's no primer in it. All right. So this gun is currently loaded with, I think this takes 7 rounds. This is loaded with those exact same dummy rounds or snap caps. They are not live rounds. Okay. Now, I surmise that Mr. Baldwin was using a single action revolver because of what I said already. Because if this film takes place in the Old West, which is the impression I get, then the single action revolver was the prevalent revolver of that time. Okay. And the picture that I saw, it looked like a single action revolver. So if someone wants to correct me, please feel free, but I'm going to work on that premise. So now, this is not a .45 caliber single action, it's a 22. However, one of the things that Mr. Baldwin said during that interview was he said that when he was handed the gun, he was told, you don't want to go click, 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 click on the trigger. You don't want to just start pressing the trigger with the revolver. That is true with a 22 caliber pistol. Doesn't matter if it's single action, double, it doesn't matter. With a 22 pistol, you do not want to just press the trigger when the chamber is empty. I'll explain why. If you notice, with the 22, you see that flared edge there? That rim? Well, the 22 is an example, and it's the most popular example. Matter of fact, it's the only example that I'm aware of a rimfire cartridge. It's called a rimfire cartridge because the primer, unlike your typical rounds like a 45 or a 9mm or so forth, where the primer is located in the center, which is why they're called center fire cartridges. With a 22, it is a rimfire cartridge because the primer is located in that flared part. Okay? So the primer on a rimfire cartridge is located on the rim, not in the center, like your typical, this is another dummy round, like your typical 9mm or 45, where the primer is located in the center. Again, on a rimfire round, which is a 22 round, the primer is located on the edge or on the rim. So when Mr. Baldwin says that he was handed the gun and was told not to just press the trigger, click, 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 because it could damage the firing pin, he is correct. But that's only with a rimfire, a pistol that shoots a rimfire cartridge. The reason being is, like I just showed you, the primer is on the edge of the cartridge. So that means the firing pin is going to hit on the edge of the cartridge while it's in the chamber. Now, if you don't have an actual cartridge in the chamber or a dummy round in the gun when you press the trigger, the firing pin will hit the hard edge of the barrel itself and could possibly crack or be damaged. So when you dry fire a 22, you have to have a dummy round in it so that it doesn't hit the hard edge. Now, it's because a dummy round or a live round, when the firing pin hits on the edge, is hitting the soft metal of the shell casing. Otherwise, if it's an empty chamber, it's going to hit on the edge and hit the hard edge of the barrel and crack. Whereas with, and I'm going to press the trigger on this, I've already shown you that these are snap caps. When you press the trigger, the hammer is going to strike the firing pin, which you might be able to see. I don't know if you can see that. It's going to strike the firing pin, and that will hit the edge of the rimfire cartridge, which is loaded now in the cylinder in its chamber. Now, if that chamber did not have that dummy round, it wouldn't hit the edge of the soft metal of the cartridge. It would hit the hard edge of the barrel and possibly be damaged. So Mr. Baldwin is correct that you don't just go click, 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 click with this gun. However, this is a 45 snap cap. It emulates a 45 caliber cartridge. Like I said before, with the 45, with your 9, with the 380, with your more popular cartridges, they are center fire, where you can see in the center, there's the primer is there in the center, not on the rim or the edge. So when you dry fire a 45 caliber gun, you don't have to have a dummy round or snap cap in the chamber because it's the firing pin is not going to hit the hard edge and possibly snap. It's going to go right in the center of the barrel where the primer would be on the center fire cartridge. So in general, it is okay to dry fire without anything in the chamber when you're dry firing a pistol that shoots a center fire cartridge. So right there, something doesn't add up. If Mr. Baldwin says he was told you're not supposed to click, 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 click because you could damage the firing pin, that would be the case if you're shooting a 22 pistol. It would not be the case if you're shooting a 45 caliber pistol, because the same conditions, as I've said a few times, they don't exist with the 45. The firing pin is going to go right in the center. It's just going to hit dead air, not the edge, which it would do with a rimfire pistol. So that is an inconsistency right there. The proper use of this firearm is that when you want to shoot this firearm, you have to cock the hammer back because it is single action only. That means when you press the trigger, only one thing happens. it causes the hammer to spring forward. It releases the hammer so that the hammer can hit the firing pin, then strike that rim fire cartridge and cause that spark with the primer on the edge of the rim, and that causes the whole process for the bullet to come out of the muzzle. So you have to cock this back and it locks back. Then you put your finger on the trigger and you press. Mr. Baldwin said that he cocked the hammer back and then he let the hammer go and the pistol shot. Now, I was watching this on Good Morning America. They brought on or Good Morning America took a clip from a professional armorer. An armorer is someone who handles guns on a movie set or they handle guns, period, and they're typically hired to handle guns on a film set. That armorer, he said that is very inconsistent what Mr. Baldwin is saying, because that is not the way the gun is manipulated. For you to shoot this gun, again, it's single action. That means if I put my finger on the trigger, it's not going to do anything, because the trigger, when you press it, it does one thing. It releases the hammer. I have to cock it back manually. And it locks back and stays back. That's the proper use. And you see the trigger went back. Now I can press it and the gun will fire. So it makes no sense when Mr. Baldwin says he put his thumb on the hammer and he released it and the gun fired. There's only one way to make this gun fire. Cock it back, press the trigger, okay? Now, he also went on to say, and this was very weird, he was pointing the gun in the direction of the cinematographer and the camera and the director. And he was saying, okay, he says, I cocked the gun back. And he says, can you see that? Can you see that? Can you see that? That makes no sense. There are no stages of cocking this hammer. You don't cock a hammer like this. Can you see that? Can you see that? No, you don't cock a hammer like that. Now, is it possible that he was doing this and just holding it like that and seeing if they could see the shot? Now, if that's what he was doing, that is an improper way to manipulate this firearm. You're not supposed to just hold it back with your thumb, because if it slips, it potentially could spring forward, strike the firing pin, and fire. So if he was doing that, then as he says, he took some classes years ago. I don't think this is something you would forget. I think this would be like riding a bike. When you see that hammer, I don't care how long ago you took your classes, you're going to remember, cock this back and lock it back, and then you press the trigger. So that whole thing about him saying, can you see that? Do you see that? Do you see that? That is not a safe way to manipulate this firearm, because it could slip out and cause the gun to go bang. And if that's what he did, he was negligent. He was negligent, and I think he's culpable. The fact is, there was a loaded round or a hot round in the cylinder. I suspect that, because there have been stories that people were having fun with the guns the night before, or some of the crew they were doing some plinking, just shooting at some cans or whatever. So let me show you something. This is a double action revolver, okay? With a double action revolver, the way you check the chamber is you press on the cylinder release latch and the cylinder comes right out. And you can check easily to see if there are any rounds in the cylinder. With the single action revolver, however, and I think this is one of the reasons they're not that popular, except for collecting and for highly specified competition. The single action revolver has a loading gate. It does not have a cylinder release latch. The cylinder does not fold out or collapse open. You have to open the loading gate, and the only way you can inspect this cylinder is one chamber at a time. You have to rotate it and make sure every chamber is empty. You cannot visualize all the chambers in one go. So that makes it much more, I'm not going to say difficult, but much requires much more attention to making sure that the firearm is clear and unloaded. And it's not beyond the realm of possibility that someone got lazy, didn't check every chamber, and make sure that they are empty. Again, you have to cock the hammer on this gun and watch the trigger. Now I've got a hair trigger. That's the only way this gun will shoot, in the single action mode. And it is a very light press. So bottom line, there's no such thing as cocking back the hammer and the gun shoots. That doesn't happen with this gun. Unless you're doing it inappropriately or improperly and you're holding it back like that, which is what I can only imagine Mr. Baldwin was suggesting he was doing, which is inappropriate. And that's mishandling the firearm because, as I've said, it could slip out and it could potentially go bang. So I gave you my theory about them not really fully inspecting the cylinder, because you have to rotate it and check every chamber individually, as opposed to this, where you can just, let's do it this way. You can just flip it down and you can inspect all the chambers at once. Can't do that with this gun. But here's the thing, with this gun, when you want to unload either a live round or the empty shell casing, because with the revolver, the shell casing stays in the cylinder until you eject it using the ejector rod, which is done like this. Press back on that. That kicks out anything that's in the chamber, empty shell casing or live round. Okay? So you can get it all done in one motion, like that. Okay? Again, not so simple with the single action. You have to, I might get it wrong because I haven't used this in so long. You have to open the loading gate and you have to individually make sure that it's lined up. You have to individually kick out every empty shell or live round. You have to line it up. And there's no click, at least not on this one. So imagine you have to do this for every chamber. Now, you've had a long day of shooting, 12, 16 hours, not uncommon. If you have to go through all of that with each gun on the set, is it possible that you might get tired, you might get lazy, or you might get careless or distracted and close it up because you just want to get home? And remember, these guys were being mistreated on the set. They had to drive, what, an hour or hour and a half to get back to lodgings because the production would not pay for them to stay near the set where they were shooting in the hotel. So is it at all possible that maybe with this particular type of gun, you might not notice that one round that's still in there because you just want to get home? I'm not saying he's lying. I'm not suggesting that. But what I am saying is that, and I'm having, oh, here we go. Again, this gun takes a little bit more care. The round was kind of jutting out, so it wouldn't close the loading gate. I wouldn't have to go through all that with this other gun. I would see it immediately. But I'm not saying Mr. Baldwin is misleading on purpose. I'm just saying that some of the things, at least a couple things he said, just did not make sense. Unless there's something that within my 4 years of training, which is not a lot, but I've been training consistently, and I feel like I've learned from some of the best. So unless things that I've been told are completely inaccurate, I don't think they are, because they're supported by what I heard the professional armorer say when he was interviewed following that interview with George Stephanopoulos of Mr. Baldwin. Something just does not add up. All right. If you have any comments, if you disagree with me, please feel free to post them underneath. If you like this video, please subscribe. That's all I've got for now, guys. I hope my prayers, my best wishes go out to the family. It's a tragic situation. I also wasn't too pleased with Mr. Baldwin saying definitively that he knows he's not responsible. That's a little, I find that statement to be a little bit full of hubris. But be that as it may, I'm not accusing him of anything. Just some of the things he say, I know, don't add up. So, all right, guys, I will see you soon in my next video. Take care.